Always Mine by SamadiW. Chapter 14, Part 1. Graduation was upon them in 2 weeks, and the older students were eager to have it end and take the all-important step into adulthood. Draco and Hermione focused on their budding relationship. They were in a constant state of bliss. She was the one thing that gave him hope and redemption from his past deeds. The woman was so genuinely good, it rubbed off on him. She made him want to become better. They fell into a healthy pattern around each other. Draco had never known the selfless love and wanting Hermione offered him so ardently. He drank it up eagerly, getting lost in her. Despite all odds, they were in love, and he had no intention of letting her go and planned to tell his parents soon. He knew it wouldn't go well, but they would face that hurdle together. Come what may, as long as they were together, they would be strong. He hugged her and tried to cuddle, but she pushed his arm aside and made a mad dash for the bathroom. Sleepy-eyed, he woke up, perplexed and worried. What the hell just happened? Following his beloved to the bathroom in concern, he saw her doubled over the commode, vomiting. He walked into the bathroom without hesitation, crouched beside his girlfriend and gently stroked her hair. Another wave of nausea tore through Hermione, and she used her free hand to shoo him away. "You don't need to see this." Draco smiled and touched her temple. She didn't seem to have a fever. He returned to the room, sat on the bed anxiously, waited for her to come out.
"Why don't you get some rest? I'll copy the notes for you,"
he told her reassuringly. She hated to miss class, but she wanted nothing more than to crawl back into bed and sleep. He dressed quickly and looked over her in concern. Light snores came out of her, and he sighed. He wanted to crawl in next to her and take her to Madame Pomfrey. Slowly closing the door, making sure not to disturb a sleeping witch, Draco went towards their shared common room and pulled out a mug. There was a sharp nip at the window, and he looked up in alarm to see the Malfoy family owl at the window. Surprised, he opened it, and the magnificent owl flew in, stretching its wings. It did a small circle around the door before landing on the table. Draco offered some snacks to the tawny owl, who accepted them happily. He took the message and stared at it. He recognized the handwriting at once. He frowned at the piece of paper. His father never wrote to him, and Draco preferred it that way. He wanted nothing to do with the men.
"Son, your presence is requested at home this weekend. Father."
He narrowed his eyes. His father did not mince words. His quill hovered over an empty parchment. He tried to think of a suitable excuse to get out of it, but none came to mind. Balling the piece of paper, he tossed it away and decided to meet with his father. He thought of meeting McGonagall before heading to class. He needed her permission if he was to head home for the weekend. His heart dropped at the realization. He avoided going home as much as possible. Kicking a small stone in frustration, he stood outside the headmistress's office and stared at the statue. Quickly muttered the password, and the gargoyle moved to grant him access up the stairs.
"Come in, Mr. Malfoy."
McGonagall beckoned Draco forward while reading a few papers on her desk. She pushed them aside and gave him her undivided attention. He handed over the note from his father, and McGonagall frowned. Lucius Malfoy was a barbaric and vile human being. He was an absolute horror of a man. Looked back at the young man standing before her.
"I do hope it's nothing serious, Mr. Malfoy. You have my permission to visit home during the weekend."
Draco nodded miserably and turned to leave McGonagall. When she asked,
"How is Miss Granger?"
he smiled brightly.
We're good, Professor."
Giving an encouraging nod, she dismissed him. The portraits around her watched the retreating boy's figure.
"Making Draco hot boy was an excellent decision, Minerva,"
said the portrait of Dumbledore happily. Thoughtfully he continued.
"He has come a long way, and he seems to care about Miss Granger genuinely."
McGonagall pressed her lips together and hissed her displeasure.
"It's not Mr. Malfoy I'm worried about, Albus."
She added sadly,
We both know his father will never accept Hermione and will go to any length to separate them.
The portrait of Severus Snape watched in surprise at the difference in his godson. Albus was right. The change in the boy was remarkable. He hoped Lucius would not stand in the way of his son's happiness. It was a long and boring day. Draco lazily draped his body over the chair, wishing time to go by quickly. Sat with Blaise and got ready for the last lesson of the day. The olive-skinned boy nudged him for the 10th time. Turning on his best friend, Draco hissed,
"What the hell's a beanie?"
Blaise pointed the course out of the corner of his eye. Draco followed his gaze and grimaced. Astoria stared at him with a smitten puppy dog looking over her pumpkin juice. He smiled at her sweetly and showed her the finger. The woman would not take no for an answer. The Slytherin girl's cheek turned bright red. She hurriedly turned around and Blaise chuckled. They got to their feet and hurried to class. Ron had Lavender pressed against the wall, and his hand roamed hungrily under her shirt. Disgusted, the ice-blonde glanced over his shoulder and the couple and said,
10 points from Gryffindor for indecent behavior.
Ron broke the kiss and stepped towards Draco with his wand raised. Draco stood his ground and grinned.
Let's make that 30 points for Gryffindor for trying to hex the head boy.
Ron stopped dead in his tracks and glared.
I don't know what the fuck she's seizing you.
Lavender tugged urgently on his arm.
Come on, let's go, Ron.
Blaise smirked.
That's it, Weasley. Listen to Brown and fuck off.
Draco entered the dorm room, dropped his bag near the door and yawned. Hermione glanced at him over her book and smiled. Walking over, he felt her forehead and kissed her gently.
How are you feeling, my love?
Hermione put aside the book in her hands and replied thoughtfully. I feel much better. It was probably something I ate. He kicked off his shoes and joined her on the couch and kept his head on her lap. Hermione absent-mindedly ran her fingers through his platinum blonde locks. He asked curiously, Did I miss anything important? Draco closed his eyes, savoring her touch and smell.
Nothing really.
His eyes flew open and he told her bitterly,
I must go home this weekend. My father sent a letter.
Hermione nervously bit her lip. Oh, any idea why? Draco.
Salazar knows why that man does anything.
He added thoughtfully.
Maybe to discuss my options after graduation. It's less than a month away. And he's been hinting about the family business.
Hermione cleared her throat nervously. What do you want to do after graduation, Draco? He thought hard for a bit and replied.
I want to join the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. I think being an Auror is a good career path. She was pleasantly shocked. An Auror? But you're a Malfoy.
He grimaced.
Please don't say it like that. I am not my father, and I think I've proved it by being with you.
Reaching over, she squeezed his hand. I'm sorry. Truthfully, I think you would make a talented Auror. He smiled and kissed her.
What about you?
He gave it some thought. I would love to join the Department of Regulation and Control for Magical Creatures. Draco grinned. Could definitely see her fighting for elf rights and some other mistreated poor soul. Cleared his throat and nervously addressed a more pressing issue of their relationship after Hogwarts.
We could move into our own place and see where this takes us.
Merlin, he hoped it was the right fucking thing to say. Hermione looked at him lovingly with her big brown eyes. I would really like that. Draco got to his feet and pulled her up with him.
Let's go get some dinner. I'm guessing you haven't eaten all day.
At the mention of food, her stomach churned unpleasantly. Playfully shoving each other, they rushed out of the dorm towards the Great Hall. Draco woke up early. He did not want to wake Hermione until it was time for him to leave. Dressing in a casual white shirt and black jeans, he let his hair spike wildly. He glanced over at his girlfriend. She had thrown up twice during the night, and he was worried that it might be more than a stomach bug. Stroking her bare back, he sighed and thought back to the promise he made her make. She had to see Pomfrey first thing in the morning. He stated firmly,
No excuses, Granger.
She hugged him tightly. "Okay, I'll see her in the morning." Draco kissed her clammy forehead. It broke his heart to leave her, especially when she felt sick. One more kiss and he would leave. She stirred and he whispered,
"I'm leaving. I'll see you tonight."
Wide awake, Hermione flung herself at him and held him close. He choked back a sob. "I love you, Draco." He broke away, rubbed her cold hands with his, and stared deep into her eyes. He took in her petrified state. He cupped her face and reassured her.
"Everything will be fine."
He kissed her forehead and whispered,
"I love you too, Granger. Always."
Reluctantly, Draco turned to leave, gave her a warm smile, and picked up his wand. He heard the door close. Hermione hugged herself and let her tears fall freely. "I love you so, so much." It was bloody early, but he needed to speak to Ginny. Draco stopped by the Owlery and quickly scribbled a letter and sent it.
"Wizard girl, Hermione has been feeling sick for the past 2 days, so please take her to Pomfrey. I will be back tonight. Thanks, Draco Malfoy."
The owl took off at once. He watched it disappear and made his way into Hogsmeade. Ginny heard the tapping on the window closest to her. She covered her hat with a pillow and willed the annoying noise to go away. When the noise steadily increased, she swore into the fluffy pillow, rubbed her eyes, and pulled herself up. She yawned openly, glared at the owl tapping on the window, and cursed under her breath. Who the bloody hell would send her a letter this early on a bloody Saturday? She opened the window and sneered at the owl, who reluctantly handed the letter and quickly took off. Ginny rubbed her eyes again and tried to focus on the blurry letters before her. She read the letter and sighed. No wonder Hermione was in class yesterday. Keeping the letter on her bedside cupboard, she slipped between the covers to get a few hours of sleep before going to the headstorm to check on Hermione. Draco appeared on the outskirts of Malfoy Manor and stared at the imposing building in disgust. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a fucking prison he couldn't escape from. He hated the sight of it. So much evil had taken place inside. Taking his time, he smelled the fresh red rosette that blossomed and made his way to the large, ornately carved front door. He knocked once, and at once was greeted by one of their many house elves. The little elf bowed, her nose almost hitting the ground.
Master Malfoy?
Draco glanced at the elf.
"Where's my father, Dotty?"
The elf didn't look up, kept staring at her large feet nervously. Dotty squeaked.
He's in Master's study, and Dotty has your room ready.
Draco waved his hand coolly.
"That is not necessary. I am not staying long."
He smiled.
"Thank you, Dotty."
The elf looked at her young master in utter disbelief. Did he actually just thank her? Without bothering to knock, he pushed the large oak doors that led to his father's study and strode in confidently. Lucius sat at his large desk. Behind him, the cupboard had ancient artifacts and scrolls. The Malfoy fortune he had told Draco in his younger days. None of that mattered anymore. He was ready to give it all up.
"Ah, my son,"
Lucius greeted coolly. Draco put his hands in his pockets and stared at his father contemptuously.
"What do you want?"
Lucius sneered and reached for his wand.
"Such insolence."
He twirled it between his fingers, and spark flew out at the tip.
"We have to discuss so much."
Draco widened his arms and hissed.
"I am here as you commanded, so let's talk."
Lucius looked at his son intently. There was something different about him, something troubling and defiant. Refusing to be baited by his child, he glared.
"We will discuss these matters later. Retire to your room and get some rest."
Draco frowned.
"I was not planning on staying long."
Fuck this. He was leaving. Lucius laughed cruelly and taunted.
"Eager to go back to your filthy little mudblood?"
Fuck.
Draco stopped dead in his tracks. A cold shiver ran down his spine. His breathing was erratic. He slowly turned to face his father. He stood his ground and hissed darkly.
"Don't you dare call her that!"
The anger he suppressed rose to the surface, and he grabbed hold of his being.
"She is better than all of us."
Lucius narrowed his eyes and raised his wand threateningly. Draco reached for his wand, but he was too slow. He flew across the room and crashed hard into the door. His father stood over him with his malign presence.
"We will discuss this later."
Stepping over his bleeding son, he exited the study and searched for his wife. Draco paced up and down in his old room. It was only a matter of time before his father found out, but he hadn't thought it would be so soon. The connected older Malfoy had spies everywhere. Taking a deep breath, he adjusted his black dress shirt and went to dinner. When he entered, his parents were already seated, awaiting his presence. His mother rose to hug him enthusiastically, and he kissed her lightly on the cheek. They took their seats, and Draco placed a napkin on his laps, but barely touched his food. Narcissa smiled through the obvious tension.
"I have missed you, dear."
She turned to look at her son and asked,
"How is school?"
Lucius sneered.
"Indeed. Tell your mother how school is."
Draco pushed back his chair and he finally rose to his feet.
"School has become tolerable since I fell in love with Hermione Granger."
Lucius sipped his wine and glared at his only son.
He laughed maniacally.
"Do you hear that, sissy? My heir has chosen to taint my bloodline by bedding a mudblood."
Narcissa pressed her lips down and avoided looking at her enraged husband.
Draco banged his fists on the table and hissed, "I warned you not to call her that."
Lucius laughed, got to his feet, drew out his wand, and didn't hesitate.
"Crucio!"
The young wizard fell to the floor, his body writhing with jolts of pain through his body. He saw his mother reach for a wand, but Lucius slapped her across the face, spiraling her across the room and into the carved, ages-old cabinet. Narcissa winced in pain and slid to the floor. Flesh blood seeped through her trembling fingers.
"Mother,"
Draco whispered desperately. Lucius stood over Draco, his face dark and angry.
"I will not take it this easy with the mudblood."
His eyes sparkled with malice.
"I won't waste my time on torture."
He knelt and peered into his son's bloodied face.
"If you want to see Granger die slowly, then by all means continue this affair, and you will watch as I bathe in her blood."
Draco gathered his strength, limping as he got to his feet. He quickly looked at his mother. He held a fast dampening cloth soaked in blood over a deep cut. Narrowing his grey eyes in disgust and contempt at the creature that was his father. Draco wiped a trickle of blood that snaked down his chin with the back of his hand. He narrowed his clear grey eyes and snarled.
"You're a fucking bastard, Lucius Malfoy."
Closing his eyes, he came to a decision that ripped his heart in half. His eyes flew open, and the grey orbs blazed with fire.
"To keep Hermione safe, I will do anything you ask."
Defeated, he stared at his mother and blocked out everything else. The one thing he could not risk was either of their lives. Lucius sneered triumphantly at his son.
"Good. I knew you would see it my way."
To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of Always Mine by SamadiW. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.